Hello, Unravelers. Welcome back to Tiff Unraveled. If you're new here, then welcome. I'm Tiff, and I hate to break it to you. If you start unraveling with me, with us today, you're stuck here. You're officially family. You are an Unraveler. Go ahead and like the video, hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel out more than you know, and you can hang out here with us all the time. I'm really sorry that these updates have only been coming out weekly. So far, I genuinely did not plan for that. And I want to explain why, because it's not for lack of wanting to be here with you guys talking about this Kouri Richins trial, because I definitely want to be, and we're definitely going to talk about it. But I'm on the East Coast, and I did not factor in the time zone difference when I started covering this trial. So sometimes by the time the court day ends over there in Utah, it's 7:30 over here, my time. And then, of course, by the time I've processed everything, compiled something, sit down, record, edit, upload, it's late, and I would just be useless at work the next day. And for now, I need my day jobs. And the thing is I want to give you guys something worth watching. I don't want to just sit down and like rush something every night, just for the sake of getting an update up. But in the future, moving forward, I'm going to work on that. Still learning and still growing with you guys. And I'm happy that you're here with me anyway. Before we get started, I need to make my usual disclaimers. I am not a lawyer. I am not a legal analyst. I'm also not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any kind of professional credentials that qualify me to give you any sort of expert analysis on the proceedings that we are following here. What I am here on Tiff Unraveled, if you're new here, is I'm just a girl who gets really deeply invested in these cases, who really loves watching our criminal justice system at work in real time. I'm just someone who listens, who reads endless documents, timelines, and transcripts, and who just wants to sit down and talk about these things at the end of the day sometimes with my people. That's you. And that's what this is. We're just catching up together. We're talking about, what we're seeing, how we're feeling. So I want you to take everything in that spirit. It's just like my read, my reactions, my gut. That's it. No legal advice, no diagnosis, just Tiff watching all of this unfold with you guys and having a million thoughts and feelings about it. So with that being said, I really hope that you'll hang out with me today, because Monday we'll be heading into week 3 of the trial, and I haven't gotten to talk about week 2, which included days 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so we're just going to tackle that all in one go. Again, we did that last week, and it was fine. Yeah. That way we can just talk through everything together before next week's testimony starts. Again, this is kind of just a summary, though a long one. I do my best to hit everything that I thought mattered. But if I miss something, right? If there is a moment from any of these days that I didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about, please do drop it in the comments. Seriously, I want to hear like what stood out to everybody. I want to talk about it. That's literally the whole point. That's why I'm here. So just a quick reminder of the charges for anyone who is just joining us. Kouri Richins is accused of murdering her husband, Eric Richins. He was 39 years old. She's accused of doing this by overdosing him with fentanyl, which was allegedly put into a Moscow Mule that she made for him. He died on March 4th, 2022. So she is being charged with aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, 2 counts of insurance fraud, and forgery. And then in a separate trial, there's like 26 other financial charges that she'll be facing at a later date. Eric Richins, 39 years old, father, brother, son, gone on March 4th, 2022. As we go through all of this, make sure that we never lose sight of that. He's why we're going through all of this. It's for justice for Eric Richins. All right. So if you're ready, because I'm ready, buckle up, buttercups, grab your drink of choice, a cozy blankie, and let's unravel. All right, so day 6 did start with a little bit of housekeeping. I think defense wanted more time to consult with the medical examiner, who was the first witness on the stand in day 6. They said like they had reached out to him weeks ago. I don't know. It was kind of a big mess. Prosecution was saying like, no, he tried to return their call. He hadn't heard anything. They've had plenty of time. So they were asking for more time before he got on the stand so that they could, I guess, have a chat with him. Anyway, that went nowhere. And then prosecution got the green light from Judge Mrazek to play the recorded police interview from Robert Crozier, who we saw in the first week. And defense was objecting under a bunch of hearsay rules. The judge did allow it. We will get to Crozier's interview in a minute. But so jury comes in, first witness on the stand, Dr. Eric Christensen. Again, I have my typed notes, so I'm sorry, but there's a lot and I want to make sure I touch on it. So if I'm looking down, I'm just refreshing my memory like the witnesses do. Dr. Eric Christensen, chief medical examiner in Utah from 2016 to 2024. He got on the stand. He basically just kind of confirmed and reiterated a lot of the things, a lot of the details that we heard the ME talk about in week 1. You know, that the manner of death was undetermined. The cause of death was the acute fentanyl toxicity. He went through all the numbers, how much fentanyl there was, how much norfentanyl there was, how much acetylphenol there was, all of that, right? Touched on the quetiapine, the Seroquel being in his system as well. We all know that's Kouri's prescription, not anything Eric had a prescription for. And then also mentioned that there were no injection sites on Eric's body, which of course suggests that it was ingested, right? But then they played this phone call. So the phone call took place it was made by Kouri Richins to the ME's office on January 12th, 2023. Okay, this is what, 10 months after Eric had passed away. Kouri called Dr. Christensen's office. This call was recorded. She starts asking him about the toxicology report. He told her about the lethal amount of fentanyl in her system. This girl was just like, I mean, even the way that she called was, I'm sorry, to me. And it was just a bizarre phone call. It was just like, hi, my name's Kouri. I'm just calling because I got the toxicology report and I just had some questions. What is fentanyl? Like, what even is that? You know, it was weird. I don't know. And then she said something about the quetiapine, and he was like, yeah, so this other one is called quetiapine. It's also known as Seroquel. And she pretended to not even know what that one was, which I found very strange. Like, girl, you know what that is. It's your medicine. Why are you acting like you don't know what that is? And why would you act like you don't know what that is? I find that suspicious and strange, but that's just me. But my favorite part of this call was a question that Kouri asked, and she said, so can you ever determine how fentanyl entered his system? You're trying to see if they can figure out if he was dosed with it or not, Kouri? Like, what are you expecting him to say to you? Anyway, again, I don't find that to be a grieving widow question. That's just not something I could be wrong. I've never been a grieving widow. Doesn't seem like a question one would ask. Does seem like a question one would ask if they're trying to figure out if they were getting away with this or not. But again, just my opinion. Mr. Ramos did stand up and try to push the fact that hair follicle testing wasn't done on Eric Richins. I'm basically saying, well, like, isn't hair follicle testing used to like determine if there is a pattern of drug use? Like it can go farther back and all this. And Dr. Christensen was just kind of like, there's not really a that's not really a standard of testing that's done for fentanyl at this time. He was like, it's a good idea, but it's just not something that was done. He kept pushing that. Anyway, that was pretty much that. So then they play. So before the next witness comes on the stand, they play the Robert Crozier interview. Okay, the original interview. This gets a little messy. Okay, so I think, I don't know, guys. I think the reason that prosecution is playing this video, right? Because Crozier already got on the stand and he said all the things that he didn't say when he did his original interview with the police. Not in a good way either. And because back in the interview, he had said that he had sold the fentanyl. And then he got on the stand last week and said, no, I didn't do that. I sold oxycodone. So you know what I mean? So I feel like this is what's putting the prosecution in the position to like impeach their own witness by playing his prior recorded statement. Where in that 2023 interview, when he was asked point blank whether the pills that he sold Carmen were fentanyl, he said, absolutely. But then he got on the stand and said something completely different, right? So this is the version that prosecution wants the jury to hear. It is the one that was recorded closer to the timing of the events, right? Before he had all these years to like think about it and maybe soak it in a little bit that the pills that he sold someone ended up taking someone's life. And again, this is just my opinion, but this guy just comes off as incredibly slimy to me. I don't think he's just some innocent bystander who got caught up in something, but he's in a courtroom now trying to rewrite his part in this story because someone lost their life and he doesn't want it anywhere near him. So his current story that he told last week to me just reads like someone who's had a really long time to think about like all this legal exposure and just decided to change his tune. So anyway, the 2023 version was played. He was talking to the police. He was not yet fully aware of where all of this was leading. And he said, absolutely, when he was asked about the fentanyl. I know which version I find more credible, and it certainly wasn't the one he got on the stand and told this week. Again, just my opinion. I feel like the prosecution's strategy, if this is their strategy, and again, I don't know, but I feel like it's smart, right? By playing the interview themselves, I feel like they're kind of getting ahead of it. They're essentially saying to the jury, we know that this guy is changing his story. When we put him up here, he's changing his story, right? But here's what he said when all of this happened, before he realized the gravity of what all of this was about. And I feel like if they hadn't played it, the defense definitely would have played it to make the prosecution like they were like holding on to an inconsistency. So I feel like they were just trying to take control of that narrative first. Anyway, ultimately, yeah, I mean, the bigger picture is prosecution's theory of the entire fentanyl chain runs Crozier, Carmen, Kouri. And if that chain is broken based on the testimony that he gave last week, I mean, that brings a lot of doubt into the entire theory that the prosecution is presenting. So they played this interview to kind of keep that chain intact. Okay. All right, let's move on. So next up was Molly Crosswhite. Molly had bought a home from Kouri. The sale closed January 26, 2022. So this was about 5 weeks before Eric had died. And the house had sat unoccupied until renters had moved in on March 30th. So it was confirmed that, yes, there were contractors in and out of the house. And so for that reason, there was a key hidden near the front door. Why does this matter? Well, we remember Carmen Lauber testifying about dropping some product off at one of Kouri's empty flips. Okay. And so I feel like this testimony is sort of corroborating the physical setup that Carmen had described when she was on the stand, right? That it was an empty house, there was an accessible key, and that no one was watching. So defense did point out, like, but didn't contractors have access to? Fair point, but the prosecution's point specifically is about Carmen, I think, using that location to make the drop. Side note about Molly, one juror, I guess, had sent a note to the judge saying that they knew Molly professionally, not like knew her, but that they had a business transaction. I think they had bought a home from Molly Crosswhite. The judge had said that he would, take it under advisement. He would consider it and address it later. And then we have Allison Wright. Now, Allison Wright is Cody's wife. Cody Wright is Eric Richins' business partner in C&E Masonry. Cody is the C in C&E. She knew Eric and Kouri. They socialized a lot. They went on trips together. And so she had testified actually about a conversation that she had with Kouri during a 2019 trip to Costa Rica. So this was years before Eric's death. Now, Kouri, I'm sure after some loose juice, had opened up to Allison and expressed that she had felt very trapped in her marriage. And the culprit for her feeling trapped in that marriage was the prenuptial agreement. Kouri had laid out to Miss Allison exactly what she was afraid of, right? She was afraid of the fallout, the financial fallout after a divorce. She was afraid of losing ground with the kids to Eric's lifestyle. And she was afraid about how she would be perceived, because we know, if we know one thing with Miss Kouri, it's all about the looks, it's all about the perception, it's all about the image. Speaking of looks, I cannot believe that she is allowed to sit in this courtroom and make some of the faces at these witnesses that she's making. I thought they discouraged that in the courtroom. This girl has been expressive, okay? Expressive, almost at times combative with her facial expressions. It has been blowing my mind. Like every time Court TV cuts to Kouri, she's doing something like it's crazy. I've never seen a more expressive defendant as far as like, the face goes. But anyway, that's besides the point. Let's get stay stay on track, Tiff. Okay. So this to me, and I think the point of this was to show that, Kouri's been thinking this way and feeling this way for a while. Okay, because this trip happened in 2019. So defense came at Allison from a couple of different angles. Okay. The first thing they tried to do was establish that Eric was having an affair, apparently, with a coworker. Where did that come from? And so the implication here was that Kouri's unhappiness in the marriage was Eric's fault, right? Certainly not a sign of her own financial motive. Meanwhile, Kouri's the one having the affair, okay? Let's not forget. But if Eric were cheating, then Kouri feeling trapped wouldn't be sinister at all. It would just be a woman in a bad marriage who couldn't figure out how to get out. Poor Kouri. Can't you see? Allison sat on that witness stand and said she didn't say anything about that. I didn't know anything about that. So she couldn't confirm this affair. So defense just really didn't get much traction there. And then they also brought up this, what they called falling out between Kouri, or not between Kouri, between Cody and Eric, over like some hunting law investigation. And so the suggestion there, I think, was that there were complicated dynamics in Eric's world beyond his marriage. Okay, there were many other tensions. There were plenty of other conflicts, weren't there? Again, Allison did acknowledge what she knew about an argument that Cody and Eric had had, but she wasn't able to like fill in all of the details. So that was kind of it for Allison this day. But I don't believe she was released from subpoena. I do think that she's expected to be recalled. I think that's what I had in my notes. So I don't think the defense is done with her. I feel like there's going to be more to come as far as Allison is concerned. Then we had Detective Jeff O'Driscoll. He got on the stand again very, very briefly. He was the chief investigator on this case in Summit County Sheriff's Office. He got on the stand. It was basically a chain of custody, like foundation laying thing that he had used Celebrite to extract this data and that data. Just establishing chain of custody before the digital forensics testimony could begin. And that brings us to Unravelers, my favorite part of absolutely any and every trial. The digital forensics, the Google searches, Big Brother watching over all of us. Let's get into that. This was the big one for day 6, okay? So Chris Kotradimos comes to the stand. He had analyzed multiple phones. And ladies and gentlemen, the picture that this man paints is a very hard one to just look away from, in my opinion. And look, this is what happens when you do bad things and then get on your phone. This is what happens. Actions Meet consequences. Anyway, all right. So Kouri had 3 phones, okay? She had a white iPhone that she had from like 2020 to 2022. She had a silver iPhone that she had in April of 2022, so the month after Eric died. And she had that for about a year until May of 2023. And then she had a blue iPhone that overlapped with the silver one. All right. The white iPhone that she had, so she had this one from 2020 to 2022, okay, up through and until Eric died. The white iPhone had 2 phone numbers, the carrier number and then a VoIP number, right? So the VoIP number was used almost exclusively to communicate with the paramour, Josh Grossman, her alleged affair partner. Those texts started almost daily, according to the testimony, in like November of 2021. I mean, she had a secret second number, right? For contact with almost exclusively one person. So draw your own conclusions. All right. Mass deletions. Okay. Between January and mid-March, after Eric died, before Eric died, after Eric died, Kouri's white iPhone shows hundreds of texts deleted. Most web history wiped and call logs just gone. Carmen Lauber's phone, which was also analyzed by Mr. Kotradimos, same pattern. Interesting, right? I thought so. Looks like 2 phones, coordinated cleanup. Okay. So 800 text messages between Kouri and Carmen from January through March 15th, 2022. 800. Turned out to be about 11 a day. After Eric died, that communication dropped almost 70%. Prosecution would have you believe because the job was done. He talked about cell tower data for February 11th, February 26th, and March 9th, and that this cell phone data placed both Carmen's phones and Robert Crozier's phones in the area of the Draper Maverick on each of those dates, which Carmen testified to. Carmen's device was never in those areas on any other occasions, only those 3 dates. The dates and the locations match Carmen's testimony. Defense, of course, objected to cell tower records coming in for some blah, blah, blahs. I don't remember. Overruled. Okay. Eric's phone, the night of March 3rd. Okay. He texted a man named Pedro Sonora. He had an 8-minute call with Scott Wagner. He Googled a route from Scottsdale to Nogales. Okay. At 10:18 p.m., he got a text from Raul Sene, and he never opened it at 10:18 on the night that he died. He never opened it. It sat there unread. Kouri's phone, the morning of March 4th, when all this happened, the phone was unlocked at 3:06 a.m. Speaker was activated at 3:07 a.m. Device moved 243 feet at 3:08. Multiple additional locks and unlocks. 911 call at 3:21. That's a 15-minute gap between the phone showing first activity and when Kouri called for help. Kouri, what were you doing for 15 minutes? I think defense says that she didn't realize at this point that she had just come in the room and had unlocked her phone, gotten into bed, unlocked her phone, thought Eric was cold, thought he was very still, but was doing some stuff, and then realized. Can it be disproved? That's the issue, right? At 8:29 a.m. on March 4th, so this is after Eric had been taken out of the home, okay? That's where we get those 3 images that I showed you guys, those memes that she accessed on her iPhone. The Kevin Spacey one. I'll see if I can put them. I think, where do I have? I have Eric here. So we'll put Kevin Spacey here. Idiots everywhere. Yeah, she did that one. The Dumb and Dumber money GIF Do you guys say GIF or GIF? It's GIF, right? I have no idea. And the best, right? The Donald Trump, I'm really rich. This one. Okay? Yeah. That happened at 8:30. Oh, 8:29 that morning. Her husband had just died. Her husband had just died. He had just been taken out of the house. That's what she was accessing on her phone. Cool. Very cool, Kouri. Just doesn't look good for you, kiddo. It really doesn't. It makes me really not like you. I mean, that's not the only thing, let's be honest. All right. We have the Google searches. These were made on Kouri's blue phone after Eric's death. Let's talk about some of those. Can you delete iCloud? Deleted text retrieved. Remotely wipe iPhone. Women, Utah prison. Summit County DA. She was looking for who the DA of Summit County was. She wanted to know who she was going to be up against when she inevitably got busted. Can cops find deleted messages? FBI electronics. What is non-natural manner of death? Lethal dose of fentanyl. Luxury prisons for the rich. If someone is poisoned, what does the death certificate say? Will life insurance pay if death certificate says pending? When will I get my money? She didn't say that second part. I put that in there. Kouri Richins' net worth. The girl was Googling her own net worth. Priorities, you know what I mean? And before anyone asks, yes, we know that Kouri was the one using the blue phone because she texted Grossman from it saying that she had activated her mom's phone and would be using that one now going forward. So we know this is her. She's identifying herself on this phone in a text message. That was day 6. Once we got through the text and the Google searches, that ended the day. Oh, another side note. Remember in week 1, during Chelsea Gibson's testimony, she had accidentally referenced the jail calls. We talked about that. Defense does what defense has done. I don't know. Am I counting 3 or 4 times so far during this trial where they have gone up and moved for a mistrial? Anyway, judge denied it. He said it was inadvertent, innocuous, and gave the jury a curative instruction to disregard the statement. Anyway, bottom line, day 6. I feel like they had built a pretty substantial web there, right? The video of Robert Crozier, I feel like was a necessity coming from prosecution to like get out in front of this. Cell tower data, the mass deletions of both phones, the memes being accessed, hours after the death of her husband, the phone call to the ME's office, weird. And I think day 6, I don't know. This whole week I found really interesting. So let's get into day number 7. This would be Tuesday of this week. Let's talk about it. Okay, just kidding. I mean, we're going to get to day 7. I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt the flow. But you guys know, like, this part to me, I have to go into a little bit more. So, Gisela K, I know if you're watching me, I'm sure you watch her. If you don't, you should 100%. So I am I am a member of her Patreon, and she had posted the documents, like the actual documents. They showed all of this in court, but she has a nice clean. Yeah, I mean, look at can we just talk about some of this, like some of the websites, right? Utah State Prison, Women's Facility, Utah Inmate Roster. I don't know why she was looking at the roster. What happens to deleted messages? These were websites that she like visited, clicked on, I think. Police can't read your iMessages, but here's what they can see. 5 things you need to know about the Utah State Prison and when the old ones will be torn down. Delay and claim payment for death certificate with pending cause of death, okay? Cause of death usually does not impact life insurance payments. FBI conducted potentially millions of searches of Americans' data last year, report says. How do police and forensic analysts recover deleted data from phones? I don't know what that would have been about. Is circumstance unknown an accident? Oh, Oh, I got you. Okay. She was trying to see if because they put manner of death unknown, she was like, okay, so they're saying this was an accident, right? No, girl. Here you are in court. One pill can kill, understanding the risks of fentanyl. How long does life insurance companies take into dot pay? Yeah. Two arrested after teenager overdoses on fentanyl. So lots of fentanyl searches. She's Googling her own mansion. How to hire someone to write a y'all, I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't even notice this one until right now. I don't know if you could tell from my reaction. Kouri. She didn't write that book, y'all. Okay. Um, what we investigate. How does the FBI work a case? This girl's wanting to know all the ins and outs of what's about to happen to her. Okay, signs of being under federal investigation. Detective Jamie Woody relationship to Richins. Mm. Um, overview of Jamie Nora Woody. Circle Ranch, Summit County, Utah. Circle Ranch donates money to Summit County, Utah. She's searching for O'Driscoll. Okay, so here we go. Can you delete everything on an iCloud account? Can you I think she meant change the password remotely of a lost cell phone? Can deleted text messages be retrieved from an iPhone? Can you change the password remotely of a lost cell iPhone? Log into iCloud account. What do cops when the seize electrobics? What information can be obtained from a cell phone? Utah prison, women Utah prison, Summit County DA, uncover deleted iPhones or uncover deleted messages, iPhone, how to unlock my iCloud, what does lock, all this stuff about like recovering deleted messages, wiping the iPhone clear remotely. Um, Guys, is she, like, panicked while she's typing? These are so you know when you're typing really fast and you keep hitting the period instead of the space bar? And, like, her spelling is terrible. Where's her autocorrect? Is she actively in panic mode while she's making some of these searches? Because she's not taking her time. How to permanent how to permanent delete information from an enemy phone. Yeah, I'm sure her results were top tier. How to permanently delete information from an iPhone remotely. 21 days, a law rules someone has to respond to a court complaint. In Utah, can cops force you to do a lie detector test? Can probable cause be a testimony? Oh, what happens if you're detained but never got read Miranda rights? What are you allowed in Utah jails? I mean, she's planning, she's like, what am I gonna allow to order from Amazon? Like, what books am I gonna be able to read here? Maybe a dictionary would be good. Death certificate says pending. Will life insurance still pay? She's searching for luxury prisons for the rich in America. Is naloxone similar to heroin? Can you overdose on naltrexone nor fentanyl? Um, what prescription is used to stop alcoholics? Like she didn't even know. She tried to Defense tries to say that I think what they're trying to say is that he was taking naltrexone because naltrexone does have the use for naltrexone is to curb cravings for like substances, alcohol, and I guess certain narcotics. I'm not entirely sure. But its off-label use is can be used for symptoms of Lyme's disease, which we know Eric suffered from. Um, so interesting search there. What is it? How to delete Facebook. I mean, FBI searching electronics. What is considered non-natural manner of death? Who determines cause of death? Can the cause of death be changed? What is a white collar crime? Why would the FBI be involved? Is the medical examiner report and autopsy report different? When does the FBI get involved in a case? How to find an author to write a book on you? I didn't see that one either. So she wanted someone to write a book about her. She felt like her story was that important to be told. Fentanyl found in marijuana gummies. More about life insurance, cause and manner of death. Circle Ranch detective. She's searching these detectives a lot. She's searching the mayor. She's searching to who makes donations to Park City. She's seeing if the Richins family has donated money. Um, yeah. What happens if you give Narcan to someone who doesn't need it? More about private donations. I guess these are like mayors, politicians, detectives, you know, in Summit County. Yeah. So, I mean, in my opinion, these are very telling. Oh, this one caught my attention. This one right here at the top that we're looking at right here. If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? Why poisoned? Right? The search doesn't say if someone overdosed, what is the cause of death? Or if someone, that's not what it says if someone is poisoned. A strange choice of words, in my opinion. Could be nothing, but anyway. All right. Let's move on. All right, now we'll actually get to day 7, I promise. Here it comes. Here it comes. Glasses have entered the chat. You know that means I'm getting serious. I'm getting serious. I mean business, okay? Actually means I just can't see, and I'm starting to get a headache from the eye strain, okay? My 40s so far have not been very nice to me. I used to have perfect eyesight. Perfect. Not so much anymore. All right. So, in day 7, we're talking about the money trail here, okay? But this day was dense, okay? Forensic accounting spreadsheet on a whiteboard, dense. And I can't go through it all. There was one witness on the stand the entire day. And yes, she goes through all of the details of all of the finances and all of the that Kouri was in. I'm just going to give you the roundabout because at the end of the day, the summary is the same. We'll get to that. If day 6 is about, day 6 and previous. So the first 6 days of trial was about how Eric died. From day 7 moving forward, it's like the why. We're getting into the why now, okay? And the answer, at least one of them, according to the financial expert on the stand, Kouri Richins was drowning. And Eric's life insurance policies and his business and his assets and the home and all of these things that Kouri thought she would acquire upon his death, allegedly, according to prosecution, was the only life raft this woman had left. So at the start of this day, because of a bunch of housekeeping stuff that happened before, the judge gave a Rule 404B limiting instruction. I don't know what that means, so I kind of gathered from context, okay? Also from what he said. It's a legal housekeeping moment, and it's something that he needs to tell the jury before they hear the testimony that they're about to hear. The jury was told by Judge Mrazek that the evidence of, in this case, the evidence of Kouri's financial crimes and bad acts, right? So the forgery, the falsified bank statements, the fraud that she committed can only be used for one specific purpose: to show motive. It cannot be used to conclude that, like, oh, if she was guilty of these things, then she must just be like a really bad person and therefore she committed unaliving. So they can only use this information to understand why she might have wanted her husband unalived. A meaningful distinction, like on paper, but in practice, when a forensic accountant spends an entire day, and I'm not kidding, the entire day laying out a financial catastrophe of this magnitude, I think we'll all know. If I was a member of the jury, I think we all know what the jury might be thinking at the conclusion. But I don't know. We can all guess, maybe. Anyway, all right. The expert of the day. By the way, I typically, when finances are a motive in a trial, and I know that there's going to be this entire section about financial stuff and the ins and outs of finances and all of these things. I did it with Karina Cooper, her finances, her husband's finances, so like all that. Well, I know it's important. I know it is. It's the most important. Like, this is literally what they're saying her motive is. But me, when we start getting out of like the other kinds of forensics and we start going into like financial forensics, I start to feel like I'm going to struggle to maintain my presence and awareness in the courtroom. I tend to feel like, all right, this is the part that's like, I know it matters, but I might get a little drowsy. But it's important, so we persevere. I gotta tell you, not the case. Not the case here for me. Our witness, she's a forensic accountant. Her name is Brooke Carrington. She is not someone you want coming after your books. I'll put it like that. Just, I enjoyed listening to her the entire day. Like, I was like, Brooke, all ears, like, tell me everything. She was how much in debt? She did what? And she wasn't like extra. There was no like extra flair. There was none of that. She was just so, maybe some people just have that talent, the way that they portray information to other human beings and make them want to listen. I wanted to hear what she had to say. And not for 1 second throughout this entire day did I get like bored or, any of that. I wanted to hear her talk, and she stood her ground, which I also really love. All right. 38 years of experience. It's gotten out of the way pretty early that she is a paid expert witness, right? You're like, you got to disclose that. Let's get it out of the way, right? She also was hired by the Richins as well previously, prior to the state hiring her. The Richins had hired her when the civil suit from Kouri was filed, and they paid her about $14,000. Turns out the state ended up paying her like $200K, which, man, I got into the wrong line of, but I really hate math. Anyway, so they start asking her about her methodology, which she says includes things like bank records, tax returns, loan documents, property records, UCC filings, and business entity records going back years. She traced all the money in, she traced all the money out. She built this entire picture of Kouri's financial world from the ground up. And let me tell you, folks, what she found, not pretty. Not pretty at all. This is the only day where Kouri's faces were giving mortified and not all that attitude that she usually gives. Her face was like, She was embarrassed. She was embarrassed. All right. Anyway, so they start going through the LLC, when it was registered, when it was first filed. Eric was listed as a member. And then 4 days later, 4 days after the LLC was filed, Kouri changed the registration, removed him, and listed herself as the sole member. Why does this matter? Because at first I was like, I don't know what that means. Okay, because Kouri used this LLC as the vehicle for her entire like real estate operation, Carrington found that the business and the personal finances were so intertwined, they were completely mixed together, that she made what she called an alter ego finding, which meant that the LLC was essentially fiction. She was basically just using Eric's money to do everything. I don't know if she said that. That was my interpretation of what that meant. Like, she established the LLC so that she could say the LLC was using this money, but essentially like all the lines were blurred. Okay, LLC was fake. Not on the books, but you know what I mean. The money just from personal and LLC just very freely flowed. You know what I mean? There was no separation. There was no documentation. There was no accounting. Yeah. Here's what I really paid attention to at the end of the day. The numbers were staggering. At one point, I think Brooke Carrington put up prosecution put up an exhibit that showed that like she was like $7 million in debt. I mean, that included her properties, right? 7 million something dollars. 7 million. Oh my. Okay. And then when she separated that, so like the non-real estate debt alone, right? So this is just like credit cards, loans, payday loans, personal loans, $800,000. Okay. The overdrafts from just one bank account over a 15-month period, a year and some change, there were 236 overdraft fees totaling $360,000. Babe, I've done it. I mean, times are hard, right? You got, $46.12 in your bank account. And the total at the grocery store is like $59 and something cents. Sometimes the bank will just eat it. You got to pay for it later. I've done it. I get it. $360,000 in a year? That's not a cash flow hiccup, right? I mean, her finances are in free fall, honestly. And then she gets into like all of the payday loans. Kouri had gotten at least $474,000 from payday lenders. Payday lenders. She owed $645,000 back to these lenders. And again, these are not traditional lenders, right? These are like high interest, short term emergency loans. This is like the type of money that you take out when like no one else will give you money, right? On March 5th, okay, the day after Eric died, Kouri's net worth was negative $1.6 million. She didn't have just no money. She was $1.6 million in the hole. My heart hurts. How does this happen? How does this happen? And this is the forensic accountant's bottom line, right? In her own words. The financial enterprise was in financial distress and was collapsing. And, quote, but for a significant infusion of cash would have continued to collapse. Significant infusion of cash, like maybe like $2.2 million in life insurance or something like that. I don't know. When did it all fall apart? Okay. This was one of the most significant parts of Carrington's testimony. So the financial chaos didn't just like start at the beginning. It started to escalate very sharply around October of 2021. It's also like the same month that she established that VoIP number, right? That secret second phone number. But yeah, like the overdrafts, the bounce checks, the payday loans spirals, all of that really kind of intensified in that same window. I don't know if that's the correlation or if that's the causation. I'm not sure. I'll let you decide. But I don't think the timing is very subtle. Then she went into the HELOC, right? The home equity line of credit, that $250,000 that Eric didn't know about. That happened in March of 2019. She took it out against their property in Eric's name. Kouri signed it as attorney in fact, meaning that she signed on his behalf, claiming that she had the legal authority to do so. Eric found out about it. We know that. He found out about it sometime in between like October and November of 2020. He wasn't happy, obviously. The balance of this was never repaid. And at the time of his death, even the balance hadn't been repaid and was $254,000. So it had actually grown. It had never been repaid. Defense tries to argue that like Eric knew about this HELOC. He never took any steps to stop it, implying that he was totally fine with her taking out this money, or at least was complicit in it. But Carrington's testimony is the HELOC was taken out without his knowledge. That's the bottom line of that. Then we have fake bank statements, you guys. This is particularly brazen, in my opinion. When Kouri applied for a loan from a lender known as Ironbridge, she submitted bank statements to show the financial health of Kouri Richins Realty LLC. Well, problem, unravelers. The problem was that the statements that were submitted to Ironbridge showed a balance of $210,000 something dollars, but the balance that she submitted actually belonged to C&E Stonemasonry. That was not Kouri Richins' balance. She used Eric's statements. She took that bank balance and put it under the Kouri Richins, whatever, the K Richins header. So she submitted someone else's balance, her husband's and his partner's balance, as proof of her own financial stability in order to take out this loan. Like, fraud. Okay. On July 5th, 2021, Kouri sent this email to this man named Matt Strong. He was like a lender. In this email, essentially what she did was blame Eric for like a bunch of credit card delinquencies and told the lender like, look, don't worry. I know it looks bad, but we're in the process of a separation, very much trying to distance herself from what she called Eric's credit issues to protect her own borrowing ability, basically. The forensic accountant, Brooke Carrington, she confirmed that the delinquencies that Kouri had blamed on Eric were never paid off, even after that email. And the separation claimed that, of course, there was no evidence of any actual separation proceedings at that time. What she did was told the lender that her marriage was ending in order to get like better loan terms. So meanwhile, Eric is still very much in the picture at home. Then she talked about the Barney house. Chelsea Barney, who was Kouri's best friend, talked about how she was able to extract that Chelsea Barney had given Kouri $45,000 for the down payment on a home. This one pissed me off. We're seeing that Chelsea Barney trusted her friend with a very significant chunk of money. This was Chelsea Barney's like life savings at this point. And the forensic accountant traced those funds. They did not go to the down payment of a house, not at all, unravelers. They went to a payday lender called FundFi. Kouri took her best friend's $45,000, which her best friend thought she was using to become a homeowner, and she used it to pay off one of her hard money lenders, one of her payday loan people. Okay. Chelsea Barney obviously had no idea. And we're actually hearing a lot more from Chelsea later this week. So hold that thought. Then Brooke gets into the Midway mansion, the purchase being $2.9 million, but that the loan that Kouri had taken out to buy the Midway mansion was $3.2 million, which means that she borrowed more than the property even cost. And the settlement deadline, which I think we all knew, but it was verified, the settlement deadline in the purchase contract was March 4th, 2022. The same day, yes, the same day that Eric Richins died. She closed on this $2.9 million mansion the day after her husband's death, the day that the settlement deadline was in order for her to purchase this house. The contract was due on the day that he died. Then she lists it for sale on March 12th, 2022. 8 days after Eric died. 7 days after she bought it, she never sold it. And it ended up going into foreclosure in May of 2023, I think. In an email to that same lender, Matt Strong, Kouri herself admitted to him that the property was, quote, out of my league, and that she had no money for the $3 million in renovations that the home was going to need. So the woman bought a $2.9 million property that she knew she couldn't afford on the day that her husband died with money that she didn't have. Cool, Kouri. So then we get to tax returns. This is where Brooke goes into review of her tax returns, said that she understated her expenses and profits were inflated. She said she likely did it to deliberately make the business look more profitable than it was. Then the life insurance, Eric had $2.2 million in life insurance. After his death, like 1.3 of that was actually paid out to Kouri. She traced where it went. Brooke traced where it went. Y'all, 90 days. 90 days. 3 months. 3 months. And the money was gone. Some of it went to debt. She said approximately $600,000 toward the financial hole she was in. $600,000 towards the millions of debt that she was in. Because she put $600,000 towards that. And some of it went other places. $25,000 to the paramour, scattered across all of this financial wreckage that Kouri left in her wake. Obviously, whatever she thought was going to happen, right? Even when she received this $1.3 million in life insurance, her enterprise, Kouri's image, Kouri's everything was still collapsing. It was still collapsing right from under her feet. The payday lenders, right? These hard money lenders, everybody, they were all still circling. The Midway mansion was already headed towards foreclosure. The life insurance bought her like a couple of months. That's it. Putting a putting a putting a price tag on the life of a human being is one of the most infuriating things, in my opinion. Like right underneath hurting children, putting putting a monetary value on a human being's life is just absolutely vile to me. Vile. And what did it get her? Allegedly, if she did it. Nothing. Nothing. It got her here where we are. It got her kids without a father. It got her kids without a mother. It got her nowhere, allegedly, if she did it. Cross-examination for Brooke Carrington is basically just the defense coming up on the stand and saying, like, yeah, okay, she sucked uh, at business. Like, she was chaotic. She was disorganized. She was over leveraged. She made bad decisions business wise, right? But she's not a fraudster, and she's certainly not an unaliver. Ridiculous. Anyway, they did point out that most of the hard money lenders got paid back before Eric's death, and Carrington did acknowledge that that was mostly true. They had emphasized, like, this is real estate, this is house flipping. Obviously, it's inherently risky. And just because people take losses on these flips or these purchases doesn't mean that they're committing fraud, you know? They also kept, well, maybe not kept, but they also mentioned again, I felt like it was kind of like pushing the fact that Brooke Harrington was paid $200,000 by the county, right? Like she's some hired gun, right? Like to find out, like, I don't know what she was paid to find out. Like, dig until you find what we want you to find, basically. But again, I loved watching Brooke on the stand. She really held her ground throughout the entire day. I don't feel like she ever really overreached. She stuck to what her work showed, and she stood by that. And defense definitely tried to suggest throughout that, like, Eric was aware and complicit in all of these financial decisions that Kouri made. And she was like, I'm not going to speculate. I'm telling you what my work showed me. So yeah, I really enjoyed Brooke. And I'm sure there were so many things that she said that I love that I just didn't get a chance to write down. So if there was anything that stood out to you about Brooke Carrington, let me know down below. But yeah. And again, so I'm only saying this because I made an actual note on day 7, watching her throughout this day. I'm not a body language expert, but this was the first day that I saw Kouri, in my opinion, look totally mortified. There were moments where she genuinely just could not look up. Her attitude swings were very, very noticeable. Lots of irritation, lots of defiance. When Brooke Carrington was laying out all of these numbers, I mean, Kouri just had to sit there. She had to listen to this entire financial disaster of her life being read into a public courtroom full of people. And here's what bothered me. She looked more embarrassed, there was more emotion when they were talking about her wreckage of finances than I've seen at all when they're talking about the death of her husband or people who have gotten on the stand to testify to, what they think could indicate that maybe she had something to do with the death of her husband. Money's not everything, babe. But I think to Miss Kouri, I think it was. I really think it was. Anyway, all right, moving on. We're getting into day 8. We're inching there. We're halfway there. Hang in there, babes. Day number 8. All right, and I need to pause before I even get into the testimony of day 8 because day 8 fell on a very important day. Because day 8 fell on March 4th, 2026, which was 4 years to the day that Eric Richins died. The jury sat in that courtroom on the 4-year anniversary of Eric's death and heard testimony about the days and weeks leading up to it. I don't know if that was intentional scheduling or just how the court calendar fell. I can't tell you. But it landed. It landed hard. Day 8 was a very full day. Listen, prosecution is very methodically building its case layer by layer. When I watch trials, I love when prosecution is just like everything is just seamless, smooth, methodical, clear. I have enjoyed watching Mr. Bloodworth and his crew present this case. But let's talk about it one by one. LaShonda Rogers, she is from New York Life Insurance. Okay, she was the first witness on the stand that morning. She's a senior representative from New York Life. She testified about a business policy, which was a buy-sell agreement policy held by C&E Stonemasonry, which, as we know, was Eric and Cody's business. And the policy that she's testifying about, here's what's weird to me. So she's testifying about the fact, she gets a notice from a man named Brian Freckleton saying that there was an alert on New Year's Day. Someone attempted to change this policy. But here's the thing, not on Eric's life, but on Cody's life. And this person logged in and changed Cody's portion from Eric to Kouri parentheses spouse, and then logged back in within a few minutes and swapped it back. So all of this, they find out upon Miss Rogers' research that all of these things, all of these changes, transactions, right? The logging in, the making these changes came from one email address, CouriDarden@hotmail.com. That's Kouri's email address, guys. I know you never would have guessed it if I hadn't told you. Spoiler alert, CouriDarden@gmail.com. Or, no, my bad, at hotmail.com. Let me not misspeak. That's Kouri's email. So someone using Kouri's email address, which was associated with the login of this account, on New Year's Day 2022, a couple of months before Eric died, tried to redirect a life insurance policy away from Eric's business partner towards herself. Allegedly, if it was her that did it, of course. And then reversed it all within 6 minutes. By the way, Kouri Richins would be dead within 61 days of this. So next on the stand, we have a man named Brian Freckleton. That's the one I just mentioned. He is also an insurance agent with New York Life. He's the one who set up the buy-sell agreement for Eric and Cody. He said that he received this alert about the changes. He confirmed that the changes had come from this email address. He had contacted Cody and Eric to inform them or confirm the changes had been made by them, and found out it was not something that Eric or Cody had authorized. On New Year's Day, while most people are probably like, I don't even know, nursing a hangover or like watching football or something, I don't know, someone was logging into a computer somewhere trying to very quietly redirect a $2 million life insurance policy and then thought better of it or like got spooked and changed it back. Yeah. 6 minutes, by the way. All from Kouri's email. Okay, anyway, so that was everything for Brian. Then we have Ann Coates. She is another life insurance agent. She testified about like 2 different life insurance policies on Eric's life through the company that she worked for. The first policy, which was $250,000, was taken out in 2017. And that one had been in place for years. But the second policy, which is the one that matters here, was a $100,000 term life insurance policy that was applied for on February 3rd, 2022, and approved on February 4th, 2022. And of course, we know Kouri Richins died on March 4th. 2022. And so this new life insurance policy was taken out 1 month before Eric died. And there's more because the application came via like a mailer, right? So it's like a paper application that was sent to like a PO box. Eric's social security number on the application had the last 6 digits transposed. And so there was also no email address listed for Eric on the application. And the first premium withdrawal date, you want to know when it was? I'll tell you. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm here for you. It was February 14th. It was Valentine's Day 2022. The same day, actually, that prosecution alleges that Kouri attempted to unalive her husband with a sandwich while she was driving to see her paramour, Josh Grossman. So anyway, after Eric died, this person is on the stand to testify to the fact that Kouri called this life insurance company repeatedly to check on the status of the payouts. Yeah, she sure did. And so there was a $250,000 policy that was paid out on June 17th, 2022, $251,000 by check. And the $100,000 policy paid out on August 31st, 2022 by an electronic transfer. And then on September 8th, 2022, Kouri Richins called this representative and said, "Are there any more policies?" Oh, I should say, like, Kouri, "Are there any more policies?" Yeah. She had already collected $350,000. And she called back to ask if there was more. Yeah. Okay. All right. So then we get to hear from Christina Miller. She is a divorce attorney. Okay. She testified that Kouri Richins came to her office on October 23rd, 2020 for a 2.5-hour consultation. He had been referred by Clint Benson, who was his brother-in-law. We heard from him earlier in the week saying that he had referred Eric to this attorney. So Eric goes to this divorce attorney, and she testifies that his instructions were very clear from the beginning, he did not want Kouri to know in any way, shape, or form that he was consulting a divorce attorney. Everything, every correspondence, everything was to go through Clint. He was worried about his prenuptial agreement, like whether it would hold up, what that meant for his assets. But she testified that his primary concern above absolutely everything else was his children. She gave Eric this to-do list at the end of his consultation. And then she also referred him to an estate planning attorney, Crystal Bowman Carter, specifically to revoke a power of attorney that she had learned during her consultation that Kouri had held and abused the HELOC. Remember? Okay. So then I do want to touch on the cross-examination of Christina Miller. I think it's worth paying attention to, and not just for what the defense was trying to do, but in my opinion, for how Christina Miller handled the defense. So this was Wendy Lewis back up there, and her approach with Christina Miller was very measured. Like, I don't feel like she really came in swinging like we've seen her do previously, but I feel like she was working a very specific angle. She kept throwing out a bunch of hypotheticals, right? Well, what if Eric wasn't really planning to divorce Kouri? What if he was just doing estate planning? What if his concern for the kids was really just about making sure that things were in order in case anything happened to him, right? Not about getting out of the marriage. She was trying really hard to plant the idea that Eric's visit to this attorney wasn't actually about divorce. It was really just about making sure his shit was in order. Well, Miller wasn't having it, and look, she was so good on the stand. She was so good on the stand. When Lewis was pushing all of these hypotheticals, right? She said, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. She says, well, I've never seen that, but I guess anything's possible, which I feel like was just her very polite way at first of saying, like, man, that's not what happened here, and you know it. She also told the defense when they kept pushing like this comparison between divorce planning and estate planning, she's like, I really think you're trying to compare apples to oranges here. Like, they're not the same thing at all. And she wasn't rude about it. She never got flustered. I would have been. She just corrected the frame every time the defense tried to shift it. And I loved that about her. Defense also tried to use like this wet noodle analogy against Miller. She had used it on direct. Miller had, to describe clients who like weren't really ready to move forward with divorce. And so the defense tried to suggest that maybe Eric was one of these clients, that maybe his hesitation meant that he wasn't really ready to leave Kouri. But again, Miller held her ground. She's like, no, he was ready. I literally gave him a to-do list. Like, this is what you need to do. This is like, he was ready to move forward with this. I just overall found Christina Miller to be a very composed, very credible witness. I feel like the defense really did not at all shake her. And every time they tried to reframe what Eric's visit to her office meant, she brought it back to what she actually observed, which she says was a man who was ready to move forward, who had gotten his to-do list, who was referred to an estate planner to strip his wife's abused power of attorney. I mean, this is someone who was ready to get out, in my opinion. Next up, Crystal Bowman Carter said estate planning attorney. Let's talk about it. New shirt, new day, same Tiff, same trial, same notes. When I tell you guys, this has been an incredibly whirlwind of a week/weekend. I mean it, but it's fine. All positive, by the way, in case any of you guys were gonna ask. All positive things, all great things. Also, washed hair today, so it looks much better than it did like when you saw me 12 seconds ago. Anyway, okay, so we are gonna pick up with Crystal Bowman Carter. Like I said, she is the estate planning attorney. Her testimony is very dense, very detailed, but I feel like a lot of this matters, but I'm going to try to sum it up as quickly as possible. Didn't put on do not disturb. Hold on. Okay. She had a prior relationship with Eric through C&E Stonemasonry. She had done the buy-sell agreement for the business back in 2019. So when Eric called her on October 2020, she already knew him. She already had established a relationship with him. He came in on October 13th, and his very first priority, revoke the power of attorney that Kouri had over him. Okay. Why? Well, we know why. Because Kouri had already used that power of attorney to take out that $250,000 home equity line of credit without Eric's knowledge. She technically had the legal authority to do it, and she did it. So, of course, when Eric found out, we know this, he wanted that power gone. He had also told Ms. Bowman the same thing about communication. Do not email him. Kouri was monitoring his emails. Everything, as far as she was concerned, was to go through his sister, Katie, and his brother-in-law, Clint, through like a shared email address that Kouri did not have access to. Of course, we know he was still living at home with his wife. He had to route all of his legal communications through a secret channel because he didn't feel safe having her see them. That tells me something about what Eric was feeling at this time, where his state of mind was. So she created this estate plan for Eric. The trust that she set up, we've talked about this before, was set up in his sister Katie's name as the successor trustee, right? Not Kouri. That is the default here. Typically, the spouse is the one that's named. She said this isn't very common, but Eric very specifically chose his sister, Katie. So the way that the trust was set up, and this is what I gathered, I had a really hard time. I'm just not good with the financial stuff. The way that the trust was set up, the trust owned the family home on Willow Court. So Kouri's interest in the trust, it was structured, and she would receive income from it, but access to the principal was limited to things like health, education, maintenance, and support, right? She was not getting the house, and all tangible property went to the trust as well. And she was the one who also drafted the revocation of Kouri's power of attorney. When Eric died on March 4th, 2022, Bowman Carter's office accidentally sent an email to Kouri instead of Katie. And this was a misdirected communication about the estate. Kouri called the office that same day. Livid, okay? Which her testimony to this goes against what the defense is trying to say, that Kouri knew about this trust all along. What Ms. Bowman Carter is saying on the stand is that when that email was accidentally sent, Kouri called and was just like, what the, right? Her words, according to Crystal Bowman Carter's testimony, was, what is wrong with you people? And she was referring to the house. She was referring to the trust and the fact that, things weren't really going to go the way Kouri expected them to go when Eric died. So Crystal opened probate on March 14th, 2022, which was 10 days after Eric died. She testified that that is actually unusually fast, but she did it deliberately to protect the estate and the children's interests as quickly as possible. March 8th, 2022, so 4 days after Eric died, she does testify to a bankruptcy attorney contacting her and asking her to just chill, basically. Like, can you please just give this woman time to grieve? So the cross-examination, I want to talk about this specifically. I think if you watched it, which I'm sure many of you did, you probably know exactly why I want to touch on it. So defense on cross for Crystal Bowman Carter was Kathy Nestor, who's just not my favorite. And the energy in that cross was noticeably different from what we saw with like Christina Miller, in my opinion. I feel like Kathy Nestor was much more aggressive. I feel like she was really argumentative. I feel like she was pushing much harder. And I feel like she was doing something that was particularly frustrating for me to watch. I felt like she kept trying to sneak words into Crystal's mouth and or like characterize things in a way that Crystal had not said and didn't agree with at all. Again, another great witness, because Crystal Bowman Carter was not fixing to let that slide, not even for a minute. Another one who just really stood her ground, and I thought was a really great witness. The moment that stood out to me the most, I think it stood out to a lot of people, was when Kathy Nestor tried to suggest that Crystal Bowman Carter had basically informed Kouri like that she was just going to be homeless or something. I can't remember her exact words, but I do remember Ms. Bowman Carter saying, "I never said that. That is ridiculous." She didn't hedge that. She definitely did not soften that at all. Just, "No, I didn't say that. I never said I said that. That is ridiculous." And she was right. Honestly, the whole point of this was that the whole point of it was not that Kouri and these kids were not going to have a roof over their head or have somewhere to sleep. Like, the point was Eric had structured this entire estate not to put her out on the streets. That was not going to happen. That was never going to happen. What this trust did was like limit her access to his assets and remove her from any position of controlling them. That's what this did. And that's what Kouri was mad about. There was a moment where Kathy Nestor tried to get Crystal Bowman Carter to say, she never, or she already knew, right? Didn't Kouri already know that this trust existed? And Crystal Bowman Carter said, it was apparent that she didn't, right? Yeah, I believe that. Then Nestor goes into I guess trying to imply that Crystal had a relationship with the Richins, that she was like very close to Katie for some reason, saying like, well, didn't you guys talk every day? Didn't you, all of this? And Crystal shut that down too. She was like, that doesn't mean I'm close to her. We had a professional relationship. This is something that was happening right now that needed daily communication effectively. But again, I feel like the implication from the defense was that Crystal Bowman Carter was somehow biased, that she had just gotten too cozy with Eric's family, that kind of thing. But again, Ms. Bowman Carter was not having any of it. We got a lot of good testimony from Ms. Bowman Carter. I feel like she was very precise, very direct. And I feel like every single time the defense tried to put something in her mouth that she hadn't said, or tried to characterize something in a way that wasn't meant to be characterized, she corrected it very calmly, very firmly. I feel like she was a very credible witness, and the jury definitely saw that. Well, probably, definitely. Okay, here we go. I want to say something before I get into the substance of this next witness. Our next witness on the stand is Robert Josh Grossman. This is Kouri's lover, okay? Or as we've come to know him, the paramour. I know not everyone is going to agree with what I'm going to say. That is fine. That is okay. All opinions are welcome here. You know that this is a safe space. We're all adults. We're all family. And we can have differences of opinions and still respect each other, love each other, be kind to one another, and have conversations and exchange ideas and thoughts and feelings, right? So, and I'm only saying that because this is the internet, and I've seen a lot of comments about this man and about his testimony, and I've seen both sides of what seems to be a divide, which, is totally fine. Again, here are my thoughts before we get into the testimony. Josh Grossman, he is an Iraqi war veteran. He took the stand, and he was visibly struggling, in my opinion. I'm not a psychologist. I'm certainly not here to pretend like I have the ability to diagnose anyone, but I have enough personal life experience, and I've seen enough of this trial and enough of these proceedings, not just this one, but proceedings and trials that I've watched, that you guys have all watched, right? To recognize when someone is carrying something very heavy, okay? And this man was carrying something very heavy. I feel like there were many moments when Josh Grossman was on the stand, where you could see it in the way that he held himself, in the pauses before he gave answers. He definitely was uncomfortable. At the very least, he was uncomfortable. I don't feel like there was any performance as far as he was concerned, not even a little bit. I feel like this is a man who's been through a lot of somethings, both in his life, maybe in his life in the military, his life overseas, right? But also in whatever this relationship was that he had with Kouri. And he was sitting in a courtroom and he was being asked to lay all of this out. Not even asked. I mean, it was just all being laid out. He had no choice in the matter. Everything was just being laid bare in front of strangers on television. But he held it together. Barely, but he held it together. He got through it. I found it difficult to watch. And so I just felt like it was worth acknowledging that. Here is my personal beliefs, my personal opinions based on all of the things that I saw and heard when Josh Grossman was on the stand. I believe that Josh Grossman really loved Kouri. His cringy his cringy, cheesy text messages to her at certain points, I think, were evidence of that. Stop judging. You've been there too. Stop it. You've done it. Girl. But I think he genuinely loved her. I think that Kouri couldn't have cared less about this man. I think that she used him. I think that she manipulated his feelings for her, or I think she knew how strongly he felt for her and used those feelings as a way to manipulate him. I think she used his presence. I think she used his labor. I think she used his loyalty to her. And I think that there's a great possibility that him sitting on that stand on this day, answering those questions, he knows it now. He couldn't see it then. I think he knows it now. And I think that's why he was in such pain. I saw this as pain. I feel like the hindsight was written all over this man. And that's a very particular kind of pain. I think we can all agree. Realizing that someone that you loved was capable of what she's being accused of, and your love for this woman was a tool that she picked up, used, and put down or discarded when it no longer suited her, which is what happened to him. In my opinion, I don't know anything, but I felt for him. I did. You guys let me know what you guys think. So anyway, let's get on to the testimony. Grossman says that he met Kouri in South Carolina. He had answered like this help wanted ad to like put together some IKEA furniture or something, right? At a property. And that's how this started. He was doing handyman work for her. He was doing renovation work for her. The relationship turned romantic in early 2020, before the man had even relocated to Utah. And he moved there for her, I think, is what he was saying, essentially, to work with her full time. Yes, but also, I think, for Kouri. He would live in her flip properties. So, like, if she had a house that she was working on, that is where he would stay with his dog. He said that she would pay him occasionally in lump sums, but she would give him, I mean, he had roofs over his head. When he was flipping a property, he would stay there. Like I said, she did give him a truck, actually two. She bought him a truck, and then that one was traded in and used to purchase another one. They texted every day. So prosecution starts to walk through this series of text messages between Josh Grossman and Kouri. And we'll just go through some of the ones that I found significant, just because I feel like these are the ones that told the story. So November 29th, 2021, Kouri is texting Josh very excitedly about closing on some Park City properties, or a Park City property. She's celebrating, right? She's in deal mode. This is who Kouri is to Josh Grossman. She's this energetic, ambitious businesswoman who's, always closing something, always working an angle, right? She's a hustler. She's a boss to him. December 18th, 2021, Josh texts Kouri about his feelings, which are valid about the situation that they're in, and how he's like, you know what, I'm really sick of this phone. Basically, like, this is all I get of you is like these conversations on this phone. I'm tired of looking at this phone. Like I want to see you. I want to, that kind of thing. And he makes a statement that says something like, it's draining to love you. He knows that she's married. He's in it anyway. I'm pretty sure he's getting some sort of promises from Kouri that she doesn't want to be in her marriage, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, you can just tell when he's texting her, and again, this is a few months before Eric died, that he's just really, it's really hard for him to be in this relationship with her as it is. January 9th, 2022. This one I feel like was really bizarre. It stood out to me. I found it very strange. Kouri texts Josh about drug use. It was very random. He even testified it just was very out of nowhere. It was a very strange conversation for him. She claims in the text, after they talk back and forth about, have you ever used drugs? No. Have you? No. Do you know anything about fentanyl? Right? She claims to not even know what it is. And she, asks him to explain to her what it is. This is January of 2022. By the way, Eric will be dead in less than 2 months at this point. So again, prosecution's theory is that Eric was killed with fentanyl, and here is Kouri in writing, asking this man about, all randomly, about drugs and fentanyl. February 14th, we get to Valentine's Day. Kouri is on her way to see Josh. She's on her way to him. And meanwhile, Eric is at home. And a prosecution, of course, we know, alleges that on this day, Eric ate that sandwich. February 15th is the day that Grossman texts Kouri and says, I'm in love with you. And she's like, in love with me? Like, actually, little old me? That's kind of what I felt mm, sums up what how she responded to him. February 19th, Kouri is texting Josh saying if he could just go away, life would be so perfect. She's talking about Eric, obviously, right? And this is the father of her kids. This is the man that she's married to. And she's saying, if he could just go away. And by the way, 13 days later, at this point, Eric would be dead. February 23rd, Kouri is texting Josh about this dream that she had. She had this dream. She was divorced. She came up on millions and millions. They were living in the guest house at Midway, and they had turned the mansion into like this event center. Yeah, this is the property that she would go on to close the day after Eric died. March 2nd, Kouri texts Josh about how excited she is about the Midway closing. And she says, because, he's still expressing his frustration with the sort of plateau in their relationship. And she basically says, like, give me till Friday. Friday is March 4th. Friday is the day that Eric died. March 3rd, evening before Eric died, Kouri is texting Josh and she's making plans with him. They're talking about having brunch together on Friday. She's very relaxed. She is forward looking. She's planning her weekend. And that night is the night that a prosecution alleges she went home and killed her husband. So on March 4th, this is the day that Eric died. Grossman texts Kouri at 10:35 in the morning. Hey, babe, how are you feeling? Right? He doesn't know that anything's wrong. He's just checking in, right? Kouri doesn't respond for some hours. And when she finally texts back, she texts back saying, no words. Eric passed away. Talk later. That's it. Eric passed away. Talk later. That's the text message. Not a phone call, not a voice memo. It was a text, right? And then she had things to do. And you can tell when Josh was on the stand talking about them, he started tearing up, talking about how devastated he was to even learn that Eric had, like, look, listen, I know a lot of people had suspected that he had something to do with this whole thing, that he was in on it, I don't, I don't believe that for 1 second. He was completely blown away by all of this happening. I genuinely believe that he just couldn't see Kouri for who she was, allegedly, if she did this. You know what I mean? I feel like he was just blindsided by all of this. April 8th, this is a month after Eric dies, Kouri texts Josh Grossman and says, I think I want you to be my husband one day. And on April 15th, 2022, this is when a search warrant had been executed, and Kouri texts Grossman about it, and she just writes this whole big long novel. He didn't even know this was going on. He didn't even know she was a suspect. And she's like, yeah, these mother effers came to my house. They're so effing stupid and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what? What do you mean? Search your house for what? Like, why would they do that? That's weird, right? Yeah, and she goes on this big long rant about how dumb police and investigators are and, blah, 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 right? I don't know. Beyond the text, Josh Grossman testified to something that I had read about when I was doing my deep dive on this case, but I still just find it very chilling. And I think looking back, he kind of does too. A couple weeks, I think, or some time had passed after Eric had died, and this was the first time that Kouri and Robert were seen. I call him Robert, I call him Josh. It's Robert Josh. This was the first time that Grossman and Kouri had seen each other since Eric had died. And they took a drive like up into the mountains together. And when they were up there, they were talking, and she asks him a question. And the question is, have you ever killed anybody before? And when he answered her, keep in mind, this is an Iraqi veteran, okay? When he answered her, she goes on to ask him, like, well, how did that make you feel? I don't know. I mean, think about, like, her husband has just died, right? She is ostensibly a grieving widow. And she's in the car with her boyfriend driving to the mountains, asking him what it feels like to kill someone or how he felt when he killed someone. I don't know. It's just weird. So Grossman goes on to say that he did stay in a romantic relationship with Kouri for only really about 6 months after Eric died, that she had given him $25,000 for work on the property. But then she ended the relationship. She ended the relationship, and then she evicted him from the property that he was living in. Ended up living in his truck with his dog. He says he didn't come forward immediately because he really didn't know. He really didn't have any feelings about Kouri in that way. But that when he heard about Kouri's arrest, and about the publication of her book, he reached out to Eric's family. He said he spoke with Clint first, and then he spoke with the private investigator, and he just told them about their interactions and just about what he knew. On cross-examination, of course, defense did what defense does. They established that the relationship was on again, off again. They got him to confirm that he unfortunately did have a history of some illicit drug use. They had him confirm the fact that when he saw Kouri that day that they took the drive, that she appeared to be grieving, though he did say, it had been some time, so I don't know how she acted right after, but on that day, she appeared to be sad about the death of her husband. And he confirmed that Kouri was the one who ended the relationship and that he hadn't seen her since late 2022. I think on day 8, prosecution really is starting to build a very full picture here. We're talking about the financial stuff, the insurance policies, the paramour, about Eric secretly consulting divorce attorneys, all of that stuff. And prosecution spent day 8 basically painting the picture that Kouri Richins spent the months before her husband's death building a future with another man, drowning and in her own financial mess while systematically trying to dismantle his financial protections by taking out life insurance policies and by planning. And then, on March 3rd, 2022, was texting her boyfriend about brunch on Friday and then went home. And Eric Richins died on Friday. So that's day 8 in a nutshell. I know I missed a lot. I didn't miss it. I saw it. I was there for it, but I can't talk about every detail, every sentence that made us like, but you can. You guys can let me know if I missed anything that you caught on day 8 that made your jaw drop or that stood out to you. Let me know what it is. But it's time now to get into day 9. So we are deep into the belly of the beast at this point, because if you thought day 8 was something, which it was, right? If you thought that Kouri's former lover taking the stand and describe their affair while she sat 12 feet away trying to, look unbothered. If you thought that was the peak of this trial, buckle up, because Friday, day 9, state brought the receipts and the besties. Yeah, the besties. One of Kouri's best friends, who after 20 years of friendship sat in that witness box and just spilled all of the Earl Grey, every last drop. So the first witness of the day, however, not the bestie, but this lady's name was Miriam Bramwell. She is a divorce attorney, or domestic relations attorney, I guess. But I think that means like divorce law is included in that, or if I don't know if that's all it is, but I know it's in there because that's what this was about, right? Her testimony is very brief, almost surgical, but every word is a brick in this wall that the state is building. So here's what we learned. We learned that in May 2021, Kouri Richins walked into this lady's office for an initial consultation about divorce. May 3rd, 2021, to be precise. That's the date. Write it down. Okay, you don't have to. I did. Bramwell confirms that they only met in person that one time, but they did exchange about 9 emails between May of 2021 and January of 2022. But that was the extent of their relationship. So here's why this matters. May 2021, Kouri is consulting a divorce attorney. She's exploring her options. She's thinking about, how can I get out of this marriage, right? And then she doesn't move forward. Not a lot was said here, but I think what was said that wasn't said was Kouri maybe decided that once she had this consultation with this attorney, divorce would be too complicated and would not end in a favorable way as far as Kouri was concerned. Prosecution alleges, based on this discovery, she found another way out. So, before the next witness gets on the stand, the state wants to play a jail call. And this is where things get a little bit spicy before they even get started, because you already know defense has something to say about this. Immediately objects, of course. A defense's argument, which was articulated by Ms. Wendy Lewis, also not my favorite. So she says that these phone calls should be introduced through a witness, not played randomly, and that without a witness on the stand, the defense has no opportunity to cross-examine anyone about the content of the call. And this, they argue, violates their Sixth Amendment right to confrontation. So the judge obviously sends the jury out and has this entire conversation with Miss Lewis on the record. So the judge very patiently explains like the legal framework here, right? The part of the call that's being played and admitted for the truth of the matter is Kouri's own statements. You can't have a confrontation clause problem with your own client's statements, basically. She's right there. And you know what she can do? She can get on the stand and explain herself if she wants to. And so as for the other half of the conversation, the person that Kouri is talking to, the judge says that he will instruct the jury not to consider that side of the call as evidence. There's no confrontation issue. Problem solved. Or was it? It wasn't, because Miss Lewis kept going. She kept going. She says, I haven't even looked at this call then, in that case, not in a couple days at least. And I'm going to need a moment to review it. And so, of course, Judge Mrazek, being Judge Mrazek, who we all love and adore, says, of course. Go right ahead. Take all the time you need. And then he says, because they keep going back and forth, right? And Judge Mrazek finally looks at her and he says, quote, I feel like you're intentionally ignoring the fact that I will be instructing the jury not to consider the other half of the call. I love this judge. I really do. I just love how he's basically saying, like, what the hell, woman? Okay. You're saying the same thing over and over, presenting the same argument that I keep telling you what's what. Like, are you hearing what I'm saying, Miss Lewis? But he doesn't say it like that. He very professionally, very calmly, but also very unmistakably says that she appears to be deliberate in not hearing what he's trying to tell her at this point. I feel like this is a judge who's been watching these patterns from the defense for about what day are we at? Day 9. So he's been watching this pattern for like 9 days and he finally just calls her out on it. And he also kindly reminds her, almost as an aside, that she has the power to subpoena the people on the other side of those calls, like if she wants to cross-examine them. She has that ability. She doesn't really respond to that point. But anyway, so what is the call? The call is a jail call that took place on December 18th, 2023. This is obviously, well, it's a jail call. So obviously it's after Kouri's been arrested. She's sitting in jail. She's waiting trial. She's talking to her brother on the phone. And the subject of that call is Marie Bramwell, the person, the woman whose testimony we just discussed. Kouri starts to explain to her brother why she went to see this divorce attorney in 2021. And her explanation essentially is, well, he did it first. That was it. Eric did it first. So yeah. Anyway, they play the jail call. Jury hears it. They hear Kouri's voice. They hear her tone. They hear the way that she frames her own marriage. And she doesn't frame it as like a partnership, right? As something that she's trying to save, in my opinion. But like, I don't know. Like, well, he did it first, so I had to do it. I had to do it too. I don't really think the state needs to say a word after this jail call is played. I think it speaks for itself. So that was that. And next up on the stand is Becky Lloyd. She was an employee at C&E Stonemasonry, but she was also a friend of Kouri's. Past tense, presumably. Anyway, she takes the stand. State asks her very specifically about a conversation that she had with Kouri in December of 2021. So just a couple of months at this point before the Valentine's Day incident. So Becky Lloyd's testimony is basically focused on this conversation where she says that Kouri said it would be better if Eric were dead. Not, I'm unhappy, not I want a divorce, not I'm thinking about leaving, but better if he were dead. Those are the words that Becky Lloyd is testifying to hearing. And those are the words that she is repeating under oath in a courtroom with Kouri Richins sitting right there in her power red top, I guess. So defense on this one says, well, I think they start with like, were y'all drinking? And it's I guess it's a reasonable question. Like in abstract, alcohol does loosen lips. I call it loose juice for a reason. People say things that they don't necessarily mean, but Becky doesn't crumble. She holds her ground and says that, yeah, we had like a drink, but that's not why this was said. They do make a fair point, and they actually play a recording of Becky Lloyd talking to, I believe it was the private investigator. I think I was doing something at work at this point. I couldn't jot everything down, but I do remember hearing the recording of her saying that she wasn't entirely comfortable saying that Kouri said that like 100%. And this was back when the investigation was happening. And so defense, of course, is calling her on that. They were like, but you told the investigator that like you thought maybe she could have said that, but you didn't feel comfortable, standing on that fact, which is that's a fair point. We heard her say like, well, I'm not really sure, but I think I get defense made a fair point here. But Becky, stands 10 toes down. She was like, look, I wasn't at that time, I wasn't 100% sure, but I did talk to friends and stuff about it after she said it. And so now going back and talking to those friends, I'm sure that she said this to me, and I'm here on the stand under oath saying, like, this is what she said. Then we hear from Gabriel Morin. So this is the owner of the diner that the sandwich came from on Valentine's Day. His testimony is very brief, it's very precise, and really it's just there to do one thing, I think, which is to place Kouri at, the point of origin on Valentine's Day morning. Like, she is the one who ordered the sandwich, and that's that. Then we hear from Joshua Kays. Joshua Kays was a very close friend of Eric Richins. He takes the stand. He tells the jury about a phone call that he received on Valentine's Day of 2022. He got this phone call around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. He said that Eric was really just not himself, that it was very unusual. Eric was very somber. He said that Eric just really sounded like something was wrong. And he says that the phone call from Eric was describing the incident that had just happened with the sandwich. And Joshua said that he asked Eric, "Are you okay? Are you going to go to the hospital? What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this?" This question implies that Eric had told Joshua something had happened that required a decision to be made, an action to be taken. Eric was sick. He knew he was sick, and he was calling his friend on Valentine's Day to have the kind of conversation that you have when you're scared and you don't know what to do. So the state, I think, doesn't really need Joshua Kays to say that Eric told him he felt like he had been poisoned. I feel like they just need him to say what he said, that Eric called, that he wasn't okay, and that Eric was asking him questions about what he thinks he should do. And I think that those dots connect themselves. Juries aren't stupid. So the bulk of this day was Chelsea Barney. Chelsea Barney is Kouri's best friend. So she gets on the stand. This girl doesn't even look at Kouri. She's had enough for her. So you may remember the name Chelsea Barney. We talked about the Barney house, right? This is the friend who had given Kouri $45,000, essentially her life savings, and Kouri gave that. The money was supposed to be for the down payment or just whatever to close on a house, and Kouri took that money and paid off hard money lenders with it. They went through a bunch of text messages. Chelsea was really on Kouri's side throughout this entire thing. She believed in her friend. They mentioned the HELOC, and Chelsea Barney really, at the time that Kouri was telling her about this, Chelsea was on the side of her friend and thought that her friend was doing this, as a way to invest in herself and in her real estate. And Chelsea just really believed that Kouri was feeding her, honestly. She testifies that Kouri had told her there was like a cervical cancer scare. She rallied around Kouri. She offered support. She believed her. I don't know if the state was trying to imply that there was no cervical cancer scare, that this was just another manipulation by Kouri, like another story designed to generate sympathy, to explain away behavior, to keep Chelsea close to her, to keep her from asking too many questions. They go through text messages that occurred on the morning of Eric's death. On March 15th, 11 days after Eric's death, there are texts about CPR. And you see Kouri telling Chelsea, like, "I tried everything, Chels, like, banged on his chest. I did all this stuff, right?" I just feel like this is showing the way that Kouri is trying to construct the narrative of that morning, right? The state is trying to show that Kouri this entire time was just trying to manage this entire story. In May, so 2 months after Eric's death, Kouri is texting Chelsea about the poisoning narrative. So by this point, investigators are looking into Eric's death. They don't think this was accidental. Questions are being asked. Kouri is again texting her friend, trying to shape the story. And by June, the texts are about the search warrants. That law enforcement has executed a search warrant. Kouri's texting Chelsea about it. And, I don't know. I felt really bad for Chelsea because throughout all of this, throughout everything, you can see Chelsea really just loving and supporting and encouraging her friend blindly. I mean, talking shit about 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 everything that was occurring. Like, this is so effing stupid. How could they think that, allegedly, if Kouri did this, she had Chelsea just as fooled as she had everyone else in her life. I felt bad for Chelsea on the stand. I really did. Then the bulk of this gets into a recorded phone call. This recorded phone call is between Bryce Knudsen, who is one of Eric's best friends, Chelsea, and Kouri. It's like, I think Chelsea is in the house or wherever Kouri is with Kouri, and then Eric Knudsen is on the phone. So during this call, this is just my opinion. If you guys haven't listened to this call, if you didn't watch these court proceedings and you haven't listened to this call, I 100% suggest that you do. Because as amazing as I am at reenactments, I I could do this no justice. I'm telling you. Kouri is working Bryce. She is trying to get ahead of the family, right? Because at this point, the family, the trust is in place. The family has hired the private investigator. Questions are being asked. Kouri knows that she's under suspicion. She is working this man, in my opinion. She is trying to get to Eric's best friend and bring him back into her corner before she thinks Eric's family can get to him. You know what I mean? Like, she feels like she needs him in his corner, right? Well, if Eric's best friend is on my side, that's enough said, right? She's just on the phone whining. I would say crying, but it's not crying, it's whining. I just don't understand. I really can't believe everybody's treating me like a bad mom. They said I was a bad mom. Like, I'm not kidding. Look, I'm pretty sure that Kouri and me sounded like twinsies there because I nailed that. That is how she sounds for the entirety of this phone call. It was impossible to sit through. Not gonna lie. I put it on like 2x speed and just read the subtitles because I couldn't. She's just whining about how unfairly she's being treated. How much she loved Eric, how she is the real victim here. Bryce, she's the real victim here, This call is a masterclass. Again, I'm only stating my opinions. This call is a master class in how manipulation sounds when you can hear it clearly. Kouri's voice, her cadence, the way that she pivots from subject to subject, the way that she very strategically, in my opinion, deploys emotions. And it's crazy because she'll be in that really high pitched cadence whining. And then the next sentence, she's speaking like, well, yeah, but then like she'll get right. I'm serious, the court TV footage or there's so many amazing creators who cover this, right? Emily D. Baker covers it. Grizzly True Crime covers it. Josh at Courtroom Confidential is covering it. Like, I'm pretty sure. You can just dial right in, whether, use the timestamps. Okay. Dial right in to this phone call. You have to hear it for yourself. I promise you. You're welcome. You will not be disappointed. I can't do it any justice, as good as I am at that. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm really bad at it, but it's fun to do anyway. All right. So after all of that testimony, after everything, now, this girl was on the stand for a while, right? We went through a lot. We went through the texts. We went through the calls. We went through the HELOC. We went through the cancer story. We went through the morning of Eric's death. We went through the aftermath of Eric's death. We went through the recorded phone call. We went through the $45,000, scam that Kouri launched on her best friend. Guess what happened? Defense had no questions for Chelsea Barney. What? Zero. They pass on the witness. Yeah. I don't know what this means, but I thought about what this could mean, right? This of the entire day, I feel like this was the state's most damaging witness of the entire day, right? Arguably the most damaging witness of this day. And the defense decides that the best move is to say nothing, to ask no questions, no attempts whatsoever to poke holes in Chelsea's account of the events or suggest that she has motive to be lying or exaggerating the truth. I don't know. Maybe there are two ways. I thought about this and I was like, okay, maybe there are two ways to read that decision, or at least these are the two ways that I considered. One, is the defense really that confident in their overall strategy that they don't feel the need to even engage in Chelsea's testimony? I kind of doubt that, right? I really doubt that. And so the other is that they looked at Chelsea, they listened to her testimony, and I feel like they realized that cross-examining her would really probably, definitely make things worse. I feel like every question that coulda, would've asked Chelsea probably, definitely, maybe would just give her more opportunities to say something even more damaging or devastating to their case. I feel like they were just like, nah, we're gonna pass. Like, I feel like that's what happened. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but those are my thoughts. So we've arrived at our last witness of the week. Her name was Allie Staking. This is another friend of Kouri's, and her testimony covers two main areas, both of them memorable. Also, can I just say, Allie did great on the witness stand, but in my opinion, belongs on a runway somewhere. Anyway, all right. Allie testifies about a trip to Hawaii that Kouri and Eric took. During this trip, apparently, Eric had put THC gummies, right? Edible cannabis products into Kouri's luggage without telling her. And then the most striking moment of Allie Staking's testimony is this. She testifies that in February 2022, around the time of Valentine's Day, she was with a group that included Eric and Kouri, and Eric, in front of the group, made a joke. He said that Kouri had tried to poison him on Valentine's Day. She said that he sounded like he was kind of joking. Everybody had laughed, including Kouri, presumably. What a funny thing to say. Or a cry for help. Like, someone listening to me, can someone please hear what I'm saying out loud? Because, there's the little fact that Eric Richins was unalived 3 weeks later. And the state's theory is that it wasn't a joke. It wasn't a joke at all. And that Eric had, in fact, been given something on Valentine's Day that made him gravely ill, and that he was processing it the way that people sometimes process really frightening things by making it into a story, by laughing about it, by maybe using that as a way to get their reaction, gauge their reaction, and tell himself based on their reactions, they're laughing, that okay, maybe this can't possibly be what it seemed like to me. I'm overreacting. Everybody thinks this is crazy. This is funny, right? The people in that room laughed, and then Eric died. And now Allie Staking is sitting in a witness box telling the jury about a joke that turned out to allegedly not be a joke. There was also testimony about how weeks before Eric's death, there was a running joke in their social circle about don't eat anything that Kouri feeds you. Like, I don't know. I guess to them it was funny because they thought it was absurd, but here we are. She also testifies about a letter, right? This is something that Kouri apparently wrote at some kind of retreat in Sedona, Arizona. And the the letter is, I guess it's not a letter. It's a story. It's something written by Kouri about her life, but in the third person. Not like I did this or I felt this, right? Third person, as if she were writing about someone else. She was stepping outside of herself and narrating her own life. It's introduced into evidence, and portions of it are presented. And I think it's significant, not just for what it says, but for what it reveals about how Kouri sees herself. And I think Kouri sees herself as someone who writes their own story in the third person. It's someone who's constructed a very it's someone who in their own mind has constructed a very particular relationship with their own identity, right? Like she is the protagonist of her own story, not just like someone who's living her life. Like she's watching herself from the outside, always performing, really, even for herself. And that is the woman who is on trial for this unaliving. That is the woman who sits at this defense table and just continues to, at times, smile, smirk. Look, throughout the day, throughout the weeks, I would say the day, but I would be minimizing. This has gone on for 9 days at this point. And not just many people have observed Kouri's expressions. Like, for instance, when Becky Lloyd was on the stand testifying about like, it would be better if he was dead comment, like, Kouri's face does something. When Chelsea Barney is on the stand, Kouri's face does something. When the Google searches are read aloud, when the jail calls are played, when Eric's friends' jokes are recounted, Kouri's face does something. And she smiles, not always, not constantly, but like at moments when some people would be horrified or devastated or at least visibly distressed, you would think. She smirks. We're seeing this. And so many times watching this trial, I've literally said out loud, even at work where nobody knows what the I'm talking about, because obviously I'm like secretly listening to this trial in my AirPods. I've said like, "Girl, do you know the jury can see you?" And but then I'm like, or does she know that the jury can see her and she thinks that these expressions are helping her by making these expressions like I was like, does she think that the jury is seeing these expressions and thinking, look how ridiculous she thinks this is. This must be absurd. Look at the defendant. She obviously thinks this is insanity. Look at her face. She thinks this is crazy, so it must be crazy. Like, I don't know what she's thinking, and I don't know. I don't know. I watch a lot of the behavior panel, and I see especially like when Cross is up and I see these like smirks from her and I keep getting this duper's delight thing from her, and I could be totally wrong. I am not. Guys, I'm not a body language anything. I'm not a psychologist. I'm none of that, right? But just from things that I absorb, you know, so duper's delight is that like involuntary expression of satisfaction that comes across someone's face when they feel like they have successfully deceived others, or when they hear something that to them is as damaging as they think it should be. And I don't know if that's what's happening here. I don't know. Only Kouri knows. But the jury does see these faces. I think that they are seeing these expressions from her every single day. And in a trial, like this one, where so much of the evidence is circumstantial, right? The state is asking the jury to connect these dots. I feel like, and again, I'm no expert, but I feel like the defendant's reactions would also in themselves be some sort of evidence. And not officially, but we're human beings. The jury members are also human beings. They're watching, right? I don't know. Anyway, so this was a long one. Let's take a breath. We covered 4 full days of testimony, and I want to make sure that, we're ready to dive into week 3. I feel like the state is gonna wrap up on Monday. I think they're gonna call O'Driscoll. I think they mentioned calling O'Driscoll, who was the lead investigator on the case. And so I feel like they'll call him at the end, right? To really just kind of tie together all of the forensic and investigative threads of this case. Yeah, and then of course there's the question that everyone is asking. So like where is defense going to go with this? I feel like they will start presenting their case early next week. Where are they going? Where are they going with this? Will Kouri Richins take the stand? She wrote her life story in third person. I mean, she's been performing for the jury every single day from the defense table. She wrote a book. She has a voice. Like she has, by all accounts, a very extraordinary capacity for self-presentation, right? Image is everything to Kouri. So maybe, but as we know, taking the stand means cross-examination. And I feel like from Bloodworth particularly, that would be brutal. And you'd be opening yourself up to that. We will find out together next week. This has been probably the longest episode I've ever posted on my channel. In fact, I'm certain of it, but we got through it. You guys stuck with me. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your engagement, your comments, your everything. You guys are the reason that I'm here, the reason that I keep doing this. I feel like the community that we're building here is I feel like it's really gonna be something special, and I do not take that for granted. I promise you. What I want here, what I want in this case is the same thing that I want in every single case that I talk about. I want justice for Eric Richins. He was 39 years old. He was an incredible father. He was an amazing brother. He was a coach. He was a mentor. He was hardworking. He was loved. He was respected. And that's why we're here. And that's why we will, keep coming together, talking about this and seeing it through to the very end of this trial. That's what we're all waiting for. Where do you stand? What do you think? How do you feel? Let me know down below. Again, give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hang out with me, talk with me, share with me, chat with me. It helps this channel so much. That's it. Week 2. I will see you guys again next week. I don't know what days I'll be updating, what days I'll be covering. I don't know what next week is going to bring in my personal life, but I'm here. I'm watching. I'm paying attention, and I will be talking to you guys about it every chance I get. Until I see you again, you know what to do. Stay safe, keep asking questions, and keep unraveling. Love you.